Hi, I'm Michelle from Bloomella and thank you for joining me for another Bloom in 5 video. This week we are painting spring flowers. So here they are. If you would like to see how we painted these, then let's get started. But before that, my new patron is launching and I will be doing the full talk through video of these flowers on there, and I will include the link below. So if you're interested in doing more detailed watercolour studies, then just click that link. Thank you so much. And welcome back to another Bloom in 5, and this week we are painting spring wildflowers. I'm super excited for this one because I absolutely love spring, especially the amount of rain we've had recently. I was so looking forward to seeing the spring flowers, and finally a little bit of sun has come out, which is absolutely brilliant because I am so tired of the damp dark days now. So as you can see, I'm painting 5 pretty spring wildflowers. I've chosen a daffodil, a mimosa, a primrose, a tulip and crocus. And these are such pretty colours as well. They go together really nicely on the page as well. And as you can see, we've started off with our Artify brush number 6, a round brush, and I'm just using that to do a light wash over the daffodil. Just painted this really pretty yellow colour, added that down, and as areas are starting to dry, I'm just going in with a slightly darker version of that colour and a little bit of brown where the shadowing will be, where the petals are curved, and a little bit on the trumpet area as well of the daffodil, just adding in those shadows and allowing that to dry so that I can move on to the next flower and then come back to that later. That's always the great thing about painting various different flowers on one page, or if you're painting a composition or bouquet, then you can allow some of the flowers and petals or leaves or whatever you're painting to dry to come back to add those additional layers. So they're always in a bit of an ugly stage to start with before you can add a little bit more detailing. Just moving over to the mimosa, just using this really pretty sap green, which is one of my favourite greens at the moment, and just adding in those sort of razor sharp leaf details and just adding in a bit of that green to the stem as well, and then mixing a little bit of yellow for those florals, those little like pom-pom balls that are on the mimosa plant, and mixing in a little bit of brown as well to add that to the sides to create that 3D effect. There's also some in the background and foreground, but we can always paint those in later once the foreground ones have dried. Otherwise the colours will just mix together and won't look as realistic. Moving on to our tulip, we're just adding in some beautiful pink washes at the top, and we've allowed for some yellow and some white to show through at the bottom, which shows that variation in the pretty tulips. Such pretty flowers. They come in so many different colours, and it's a really nice shape to paint as well. If you are a beginner in watercolour, I highly recommend trying tulips because there's so many colour variations and they're quite easy to paint as well, and you can just let the watercolour do a lot of the work with the bleeding and blending. So these are super fun and super pretty to paint. As you can see, we're just allowing the first side of the petal to dry, so we've moved on to the little leaf that's coming up, and we're using a bit more of a darker emerald green for that one. It's a bit more of a darker grass green because it's a bit of a contrast to the stem. And then now the first petals dried, we can add in a bit more of that pink and do another wash just to complement the first petal that we've already added down. Just adding a bit of that darker colour in between as a shadow. And now we're mixing some pretty purples for our crocus flower, and these flowers are so beautiful. They're a bit more complex to paint because there's quite a lot of layering involved, and the petals are quite translucent, which means that you can see the other petals through some of the other petals, so they're sort of on top of each other and they sort of are showing through translucently, so you can see these different colours poking through, and it's just such a pretty plant to paint. So I really enjoy painting these ones, and as you can see, it's using all of these pretty pinks and purples as well, which is super spring. And we're just adding in some washes, some lighter colours, some darker colours, and you can see here I just love to lay down a little bit of pink and then let the purple do the blending, and we can just allow that area now to dry. So now we're starting again back at our daffodil. We're using our darker brown mix, and we're just going to go around the edges and add in a little bit of fine detail using the tip of a brush, still using our Artify number 6. You can just use the tip.
I absolutely love these brushes because they're such good quality. I've been using Artify for quite a long time now, and they recently reached out to me to send me a new brush pack, which I've tried, and I think they're absolutely brilliant. The quality of the brushes are great. They hold a great amount of water, and they also have those really nice fine points for doing detailing work, which is what I do a lot of. So they're absolutely great for me, and I highly recommend them. So as you can see, I'm just building up that layer and that colour on the stem and on the daffodil itself as well, using various mixes. Sometimes as well, if you're after a darker colour, I highly recommend mixing a little bit of the green with the brown, and that creates like a really natural shadow within the daffodil. So rather than adding black, which can seem quite chalky and quite dull on the picture, adding a little bit of those other colours to your composition can really help bring it all together. Unfortunately, I had a bit of an oops moment when my camera decided to cut out and didn't record some of my primrose flower. So as you can see, I've just drawn an additional one so I could carry out the tutorial and show how I paint the leaves. I normally leave a little gap between the leaves, so I'll paint the top one, for example, then I'll skip a leaf. I keep saying leaf, petal, you know what I'm talking about. Skip a petal and then move to the next one. So this allows that petal to dry in between. Then I'm just adding a bit of that purpley pink colour to the outside of like a little silhouette, and then that just bleeds in and does a lot of the work for me. This creates a really pretty blend, and it doesn't bleed all of the petals together, so you still get a little bit of that individual petaling detail. Then when it's dried a little bit, even if it's just damp, you can add a bit more detail to the top and the middles, just where the shadows naturally fall on the primrose flower. I've been looking at the reference image and I'm just following along those creases and lines within the natural flower, just adding in some darker tones where necessary. Then also in the middle there's this pretty star central part to the flower, and there's like these little line veins that come down the middle of the petals, and then just added in that detail and a little bit of green around the middle as well. And then this really helps bring the flower all together. Now I'm just moving back onto our mimosa, and you can see I'm just adding a little bit of fine detail with a smaller brush, just adding in those little shadows underneath the leaves and just a bit of the stem work as well, just adding in some finer details and just adding in a darker leaf behind as well, just to make this seem a little bit more realistic and helps it jump off the page. Then just adding a little bit of that stem detail. If you're working with stems, I highly recommend just having a darker colour. Even if you just lay that underneath the stem, it really helps to create that edging detail and makes it seem a lot more 3D. I've also added in some darker mimosa flower balls as well, just to help that foreground and background look. Moving back onto our tulip, you can see we're just outlining and blending some of those darker shadows and colours within the different petals as they are layered in the plant, and then also dropping down some of that darker, like an emerald grass green, and then just layering that up and blending it out as well. And then once that's dry, we can add a few more finer details, and this is all really coming together nicely. These flowers are looking super pretty, as you can see, and I'm super excited about them. And back to our crocus, we're just adding in some more purples and pinks to just help bring that flower together. It's such a pretty mix. I really would like to do an individual study on this flower because I think there's lots more that I could add doing a larger version, so that's a super exciting project for the future. So please drop me a comment below if that was something that you would like to see. If you would like to see an individual crocus study done with painting details, then let me know. So as you can see, we're just adding in our background flower that was included in the sketch and adding in a little bit of details, just using the very tip of the brush, just adding some of those very fine line veins and details within the individual petals, and just where some of the petals are curved, there might be darker shadows within them, so we're just adding in that detailing as well. The crocus flower actually goes down to like a white stem, so I'm just adding in some blending detail as well and bringing all those colours down. As you can see, you can really see the translucency now within the petals, how we've overlapped the colours, and they look super pretty and really realistic. So yeah, I'm really pleased with our crocus. And now we're just adding a little bit of that detail again back onto the daffodil with that green, brown, yellow mix, and just really accentuating some of those darker shadows and details. So the daffodil is coming together super prettily, and as you can see, most of our flowers are almost finished now. We're just adding a few of the super finer last minute details. As I mentioned earlier in the video, all of this is documented on my Patreon in a real-time video. So I talk through everything from the initial sketch, and you can actually see me sketching out each of the flowers, and there will also be a downloadable sketch. It's a real-time talk through of every single flower. It includes a downloadable palette with all of the specific colours that I actually used and mixes that I highly recommend to create these flowers, and also all of the reference images so you can either sketch them out yourself or look over the colours and what the style of the flowers are like. So that is all over on my Patreon, and the links are all on my website, which is bloomella.art. So thank you so much for joining me for this study. I really hope you enjoyed watching me paint all of these pretty wildflowers, and I look forward to seeing you in my next tutorial. Thank you so much.